Hi, Geoff Fry here. Today I'm going to do a product review. It's on Roland's new TM2 module. As far as I'm aware, it's the first module Roland designed specifically for hybrid drumming. I'm going to do a fairly in-depth review of it right now here in my studio.
Okay, so what is hybrid drumming? Hybrid drumming is basically the idea of using electric gear with acoustic gear. So in most cases it means using an acoustic kit like I've got here with some sort of electrical pad. The pad's often making percussion sounds or electric drum sounds. You'll often see people with, in Roland's case, an SBDSX or one of the octapads maybe over here. And while they're playing, they're also triggering those sounds. Well, the hybrid is kind of slowly moving on from there. And hybrid now is slowly becoming triggers. Now what triggers are these little things here. Now triggers have been around for quite a few years, but the triggers themselves I've come on to the point now where we can use them live and we can kind of completely trust them. People are using them on big gigs all around the world now, and Roland are kind of leading the way. And so what we've got here is we've got a trigger. Well, this trigger sits on the snare drum, and this little part here picks up vibrations. And what happens is the vibrations are turned into basically electricity or an electrical current, and it goes down the cable and into my, in this case, my TM2. And my TM2, it turns that into a noise. The noise comes out the speaker, and that's your basic hybrid kit. Well, what I'm doing with this now is we're mixing together acoustics and electric. We've got two options. So we've got the option of miking up my kit and having the elements of the electric stuff on top. So I may have a dance bass drum triggering every time I hit my bass drum at the same time as you hear my real bass drum. Or we've got the option of forgetting the mics completely, playing my acoustic kit, but having the sounds of the electric module. Now, where would you use that? Well, first of all, probably 90% of drummers don't play stadiums and tours and things like that. People play in pubs and nightclubs and weddings and things. Well, often you're in these small areas where you don't really have space to put up all overheads and microphones everywhere, or maybe it doesn't need the volume. Maybe the drum kit's loud enough on its own, and you just need a bit of low end to get people to dance, or maybe you're playing some tracks which need some claps in there or something like that. Now, the way that the module's been designed is there's 4 possible inputs, so you can have 4 of these triggers on your drum kit. So in theory you could have bass drum, snare and 2 toms all triggered up. In the video today I'm going to talk about how I'm going to use it rather than the thousands of options, and the way I'm going to use it is the same way I use it with my SBDSX, and that's that I have a trigger on my snare drum, I have a mono cable coming out of here rather than a stereo cable. So in other words, whether I hit the rim or the middle of the drum, the same sound is going to come out of the module, because you can choose to have separate sounds. And then I'm going to have my bass drum triggered, obviously into the TM2, but I'm also going to leave these microphones on. And what I've had to do is I've had to turn down the standard settings of the mics, so the bass drum and the snare drum, down to about 50%, and I've left everything else on. Otherwise what I'm finding is I'm getting too much bass drum or too much snare. So by bringing down my acoustic settings, I can then bring in my electric settings. So let's have a little listen to what kind of thing we've got here. So these will fit on any drum, any snare drum, or anything. You can probably play it on a cardboard box. So what I've got on here at the moment, if I hit this, then you'll hear some of the sounds coming out already. Now, that there, that's the noise that this is making every time I press my bass drum, and that's the noise my snare makes every time I hit my snare drum. So if I turn this off for a moment, what you're going to hear now is you're just going to hear the acoustic kit as it is. I'm just going to slowly turn this up, or in fact I'll go straight up and straight off, so you get the idea of the difference between the two. So let's quickly explain that again. Every time I hit my snare drum, you're also going to hear this sound as well as the real sound, and every time I hit my bass drum, we're going to add that to my bass drum sound. So start with it off. So where are we going now? Well, there's not just one sound in this module. There's lots and lots of sounds. And so the sounds that are in this are built-in sounds, and they've already been created for you. Now, the way that Roland have decided to present the sounds on this module is as internal sounds, so sounds a bit like you would get on a standard TD30 kit and that kind of thing. So you have a full bass drum with my real bass drum, and that's kind of split into kick, snare, toms, cymbals, percussion, claps, and then other, so things like explosions and that kind of thing. Now they've also then chosen to put what they've called elements in here. Now elements mean that when you play your bass drum, for instance, at your gig, you're not getting the sort of the high-pitched click sound. And so if you've ever been to a recording studio and you've played a kit and you've listened to it with your ears, and then afterwards you listen to the kind of mastered kit, it doesn't sound anything like it, because we add certain frequencies in and we put compression in and we do strange things in. Well, basically we're adding those things to this, so that's what the elements are. They're the kind of elements that are missing from an acoustic kit that are in a mixed kit. And I kind of prefer them. With this, I've been playing with this for a day now, and that's all I've had in it, and I've kind of come to terms with it, found my way around it already, but I find that I particularly like the elements, probably more than I do the actual drums. Now, as with all of the Roland type stuff, we can edit those completely. So one of the elements on here, let's quickly show you one. So I'm going to go into my instrument, and I can obviously change all these different settings. So I've got the level, so the volume. I've got the dynamics, which is to do with how fast it gets loud or quiet. I've got the pitch. Now that's a useful one, because what I've done is I found that because this is such a small bass drum, I've been able to play my bass drum, listen to the pitch, and kind of find another bass drum pitch that sort of works with it, so it doesn't get an horrible discord kind of sound. And I wasn't able to do that before when I had samples, which I was triggering off of my SX kit. We can pan it left and right. We can loop it, which we don't need to do. We can offset the sound slightly, so if we want the sound to start slightly earlier or start slightly later. Let's have a look what else I've used in here. So we've got effects. So in this one, what I've done was that there was a bit too much of the high end. So I went into my effects, I've turned the effects on, I've gone into my equalizer, and I've knocked down 7 decibels at about 5,000 kilohertz. So there's all these little things that you can do to change the sound. So when you get this module, you don't need to do this stuff. It comes with lots of sort of pre-created ones, which I'm sure have been done by little guys in white coats in Roland's headquarters. But I haven't had to change them all that much, but I've found that by doing small tweaks, I've really affected the sound. So how can we use it? Well, what I've found, because I've got experience of using a hybrid kit with my SPD-SX setup, I found that having too many kits, for me, because I'm probably a bit stupid, was overkill. So I couldn't have 50 kits for 50 songs I was playing in a set. It was just it was too much. What I found worked better was to have, say, 4 kits or 5 kits. So on my SPD-SX setup, I have a pop kit, a rock kit, dance kit, something that I call Winehouse kit, which is kind of an oldie sort of 70s sort of rock kit, and then I've got sort of other, which generally will be a kit which has got lots of effects on it, samples and things like that. Now with this module, we've got, I think it's 100 kits. So in theory, if you're out on tour with some pop artist or something like that, and you want to play every song different, they're all named. So you start off, play your first song, you flick to your second one, flick to your third one. You can change the sounds for every song. Now, we haven't spoken about how the sounds kind of come out of this thing. Well, they come straight out of a left and a right output here. So this would go straight into your PA. We've got a headphone output that could go off into a mixer for your in-ear monitors, or you could take it straight into your headphones, or you can even take the headphones obviously straight into a PA on its own. We've only got one volume control for those. So once it's taken out of the PA, one of the things that I've looked at doing is we can pan things in this. So I can pan everything to the left that's low pitched, everything to the right that's high pitched. We can kind of play around with those ideas a little bit. Now let's go back to the module for a moment, and we'll go through some of the sounds so you can hear some of this stuff. So Acoustic S at the moment is a kit that I set up, which is basically an acoustic. It's an acoustic kind of sounding bass drum with a S, which is just a steel snare drum. So that's my sound there. Well, I've created the same kit but with a ringy snare drum, and it's just a little bit different, but it sounds like this. Next up, I created one called Acoustic B. Now, let me just remind myself. Okay, so they've got a snare drum on here, an element called Bright. So let's quickly look at that. So Bright S. Now when I press left and right here, you see that the instrument comes up. So that's a snare drum. That's not just an element there. So there's a full snare drum there that they've called Bright S. So I've added that to my real snare, and I've got something called a round kick added to my real snare. So that sounds a little like this. Impact, bright snare, sub low 3. So sub low 3 is an interesting one. We've got these elements here, and this is the sound. Oh, that's not the sound. That's the sound. So I'm just adding that low end to my bass drum. And the reason that's so important for me in this setup is this is an 18-inch bass drum down here, and it's quite weedy. So by adding that, it gives me that little bit of low end that I'm missing. Now there's different levels of sub. I've got that one, or I've got that kind of higher pitch one. Now I like that low one. It adds just what I've kind of been missing from this drum. So that gives me something a little bit like this. Dance. So this one here I found really useful, especially on gigs, kind of top 40 covers bands type gigs where you're being asked to play other stuff's in the charts at the moment, and again on kind of touring pop gigs. I'm sure this stuff is huge, because you can get a bass drum. You pay a really good engineer to come on tour with you, and you put up a £50,000 50,000 kilowatt PA, or you fill a lorry full of engineers and you get this great sound. Well, that you still need an engineer. Right, you're not going to be able to do that an engineer on a stadium gig, but all of a sudden now I've got that bass drum sounding like a dance bass drum without him having to spend an hour trying to tweak everything, and I've had a little bit of high end on my snare. So let's have a listen to this one. Right, now, those are the kits that I've created. So I spent a few hours just messing around with it, trying different things out and see what kind of worked for me. So for me, that's the way I'm going to use this module. Probably, I'm going to tweak it a little bit more than that, but there's 5 kits there from the built-in sounds. I haven't bothered putting in the memory stick with my own sounds. Those are built-in ones. And they sound great, I think. So if I roll it back now to the kits that are built in, well, the kits that are built in, so straight out of the box, you don't have to do any playing around. Some of them sound pretty good. Now, the first kit claps. Well, the problem with this is designed for a different setup of triggers. So I've got a trigger on my snare drum, trigger on my bass drum. Well, that's going to make a clap sound when I press my... Well, maybe not. So I've got the bass drum there. When I hit my snare, I've got that clap kind of noise. Now, you can mix and match with that stuff. So I may... Well, let me show you. If I play the rim, you don't get the sound of the snare, but you get the electric sound. So let's just flick through a few of these and see what we've come up. Cowbells, number 3. Cowbell with my bass drum. Cowbell with my snare. Well, what the hell can I do with that? I have no idea. Let's have a go. That one could be some good fun, right? So some of these are going to get me on my kit a bit more often, which is always a good thing. If I can get myself a good excuse to kind of jump on the kit, then I'm going to do it. So number 5 on here, BT1. That's a cross stick. Well, that's designed for the BT1 trigger, which Roland make, which is the trigger that comes on your side of your snare. So if you can't make enough noise for your side stick like this, which often is the case when you're playing in a bigger venue, then add a bit of a fake stick. So add that with your acoustic sound. Now what I can do is I can trigger that just by hitting the edge of my snare. So if I play this for you. So a few others that stand out. How slow? Well, I know this is gonna, you kind of, when you read how slow on one of the runner kits, you know this is going to be good fun to play. So let's have a little go with this one. And on and on and on. And there's obviously 50 kits here with all sorts of crazy kind of stuff. So one thing I don't normally play when I do my lessons is metal. I'm not particularly good at metal. I'm not particularly into it. I'm sure there'll be guys out there like who are desperate to know, oh, this metal, well, it's perfect for metal. So all those little metal clickers you've been going through and having to rip off your bass drum all the time, well, now you've got an electric one. So we can add that kind of fake noise with. Now it's got MIDI. It's got MIDI in and MIDI out, so we can connect this to our other MIDI devices. I'm sure we can connect it to the SX and that kind of stuff. It's obviously not. The screen on it is quite a small screen. We haven't got access to menus as easy as we have on other things like the TD30 or something like that. So as far as MIDI is concerned, then I'd possibly look at another option if I'm honest with you. But it's in there, so we can change kits, we can send data like that, so we can have a pad over here that changes our kit on our SX. Well, it'll also change the kit on this one by linking them. So the other way of playing things on this, the final way, is using WAV files. So what you can do is you can go online and you can buy pre-recorded samples, and you can put those onto a stick, you can pop them into here, and you can allocate those as your sound instead. Now, because I've already done, well, I didn't buy some, but I created some myself by mixing different kicks together. I've got those on my SPDSX, and I'm going to take those straight off my SPDSX, and I'm going to pop them in here, and I'm going to see how that sounds. Great little bit of gear. I'm going to buy one of these. I've already got the SPDSX, so you might think to yourself, well, why the hell are you going to buy one of these? Well, the reason I'd like one of these is because the SX is great for certain size gigs. When I'm playing those really small gigs, and it's a small venue, or we're kit sharing, or I just haven't got a lot of space, or the room's so small that I'm too loud. This is a lot smaller device, so I can just stick it next to me. I can just easily trigger 2 drums. There's no hassle. I can see it. I can kind of play. Now, where you've got to make a decision whether it's this or the SX for you. Well, the SX gives you more output options, so you get sub-outs, so you can have 4 outputs. And when I talk about outputs, I'm talking about sound outputs. So with these 4 outputs, you could have one that was the low end, one that was the bass drum, one was the snare, one was the high end, or something along those sort of lines. So you can give the engineer more control over what he's doing. So this device, I think, is absolutely perfect for just about every kind of function, club, pub, band in the country. It's also very useful for touring bands and original artists. It's great for just coming up with new ideas. I'm desperate to get all of the gear I need to be able to trigger the toms as well as the snare. Maybe I can come back and do a video on that once I've got that those extra triggers and the splitters that I need for the back of here. So let me know if that's been some use to you. Let me know if you purchased one of these and how you get on with it. And I'll be back with some more demonstrations and showing you new gear as soon as possible.